Hello everyone. When I first started this channel, some of the first videos that I recorded were at the graves of professional wrestlers, the people that I grew up with watching on TV. Just standing at their graves brought back so many fond memories. This week, I want to look back and relive some of those wonderful memories. One of my first stops was at the Garden of Memories Cemetery in Tampa, Florida. Here, I visited one of the most recognized voices in professional wrestling, the great Gordy Solie. In the Garden of Memories Cemetery. This is a very large cemetery located in northeast Tampa and is adjacent to Myrtle Hill Memorial Park, which is part of the same management company. Entering the cemetery off of East Lake Avenue, I make my way around to the chapel mausoleum that is just east of the center traffic circle. Entering the small mausoleum and turn right into the first alcove, we come to the crypt of Gordy Solie. Gordy Solie was one of the most recognized voices in professional wrestling. Gordy was born on January 26, 1929 near Minneapolis, Minnesota, and he moved to the state of Florida in 1950 after serving a stint in the United States Air Force. He got his start in professional wrestling as a ring announcer for local wrestling promotions in the Tampa area, including the popular Championship Wrestling from Florida TV show. In 1960, Gordy moved from the ring to the broadcast booth, where he would stay for the next 25 years. After a quarter century with Championship Wrestling from Florida, Gordy moved to Atlanta, where he became the voice of Georgia Championship Wrestling on the superstation WTVS, which later became World Championship Wrestling, where he would remain until he retired in 1995. In retirement, Gordy returned to the Tampa area. Shortly after retiring, the Dean of Professional Wrestling Announcers would be diagnosed with cancer, a disease that would eventually claim his life, July 28, 2000, at the age of 71. Next, I visited the graves of Blackjack Mulligan and Hercules Hernandez. My first stop is at the Florida National Cemetery in Bushnell, Florida. It's a very large cemetery consisting of about 512 acres. It opened in 1988 and is the final resting place of about 130,000 veterans and their families. First stop is at section 325, where I have to dodge the sprinklers to visit the grave of Air Force veteran Raymond Hernandez, who is better known to professional wrestling fans as the mighty Hercules Hernandez. Raymond Hernandez was born on May 7, 1956 in Tampa, Florida. After serving a stint in the United States Air Force, he began his career as a professional wrestler, appearing as Hercules Hernandez for promotions in Florida and Texas. In 1982, he moved to the National Wrestling Alliance promotion in Kansas City, where he feuded with the likes of Manny Fernandez and the great Harley Race. Over the next few years, the mighty Hercules became a top star, appearing for many of the major promotions, including Jim Crockett in Charlotte, Mid-South Wrestling in Memphis, and Championship Wrestling from Florida, his hometown of Tampa. In 1985, Hercules hooked up with Classy Freddie Blassie and began a 7-year stint in the World Wrestling Federation. While in the WWF, he performed with such stars as Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Hulk Hogan, and the Macho Man Randy Savage. In 1992, Hernandez left the WWF and moved to Japan, where he performed for the New Japan Wrestling promotion until he returned to America in 1994. After returning to America, he spent the final years of his career bouncing around a number of the small independent promotions in the Southeast. He retired from the ring in 1999 and moved back to Tampa. On March 6, 2004, Raymond Hernandez suffered a heart attack and died in his sleep at his home in Tampa. From section 325, I move across the cemetery to section 621 to visit the grave of another professional wrestler, Robert Delroy Wyndham, better known to fans of professional wrestling as Blackjack Mulligan. Robert Delroy Wyndham was born on November 25, 1941. He played football at Odessa High School and at Texas Western University. After serving with the Marines, he played football for the New York Jets during the 1966 preseason, but he suffered a broken leg and was released. It was then that he turned to professional wrestling and soon became one of the top stars, appearing throughout the NWA and AWA territories, where he battled such top stars as Dusty Rhodes, Dick Murdoch, and Chief Wahoo McDaniels. When the top regional promotions collapsed, Blackjack moved on to the WWF, where he feuded with such top stars as Roddy Piper, Ric Flair, and Andre the Giant. Blackjack Mulligan was one of the top stars in professional wrestling for over 20 years, and along with his tag team partner Blackjack Lanza, he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2006. After retiring from the ring in 1988, Blackjack continued to be a popular figure at wrestling conventions and shows, especially in the old Mid-Atlantic area. But as the years passed, Blackjack suffered from a number of health issues. In 2015, he suffered a couple of heart attacks and was in and out of the hospital. Blackjack Mulligan died on April 7, 2016, at his home in Tampa. He was 73 years old. Next was a stop at the Glenwood Cemetery in Mooresville, North Carolina, where I was able to visit the grave of Nelson Royal. Nelson Royal was actually born Nelson Combs on July the 21st, 1935 in Floyd County, Kentucky. As a teen, he participated in amateur wrestling where he caught the attention of professional wrestler Don Eagle, who ended up training him. In 1955, Nelson Combs became Nelson Royal when he made his professional wrestling debut in the Midwest Wrestling Alliance. In those early years, Nelson appeared in Top Hat and Tails as an arrogant Englishman named Sir Nelson. The character of Sir Nelson lasted almost 10 years until Nelson found a wrestling home with Jim Crockett Promotions and Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. In 1965, the character of Sir Nelson was abandoned, and Nelson Royal became a good-natured cowboy, appearing as a singles wrestler and later teaming with such stars as Tex McKenzie, Paul Jones, and Chief Wahoo McDaniels. In the Mid-Atlantic area, Nelson and his tag team partners feuded with the likes of Skull Murphy and Brew Bernard, Rip Hawk and Sweet Hansen, and the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, Gene and Ole Anderson. Nelson stayed with Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling for almost 20 years, retiring in 1983. He settled here in Mooresville, and in retirement owned a small ranch and operated Nelson Royal's Western Store. The Western Store is still in business and still bears his name. I passed it on the way through town. Nelson was a popular figure here in Mooresville. He was active in a number of community programs, including the local DARE program and Crime Stoppers. Nelson Royal passed away at the age of 66 on February 3rd, 2002, here in Mooresville, North Carolina. The Zion Baptist Church in rural Forsyth County, Georgia, is where I was able to pay my respects to one of the most agile big men in professional wrestling, Crusher Jerry Blackwell. Today I'm at the Zion Hill Baptist Church Cemetery, Cummings, Georgia. When I put this stop on my list, I wasn't sure that I would be able to find the church, let alone the grave that I would be looking for. But I decided to give it a shot. This is a small country church, and the coordinates that I got off of Find a Grave were several miles off. But thanks to Google Maps, I found the correct coordinates and was able to navigate to the church. The adjacent church cemetery is rather small, and after a few minutes of searching, I was able to find the grave that I was looking for. The final resting place of the man professional wrestling fans know as Crusher Blackwell. Jerry Blackwell was born on April 26, 1949 in Stone Mountain, Georgia. He began his professional wrestling career in 1974, appearing in several independent promotions throughout the Southeast before moving to Pennsylvania, where he became known as the Mountain from Stone Mountain. In 1978, Jerry signed to appear for the World Wrestling Federation, where he battled such stars as Larry Zbyszko, Andre the Giant, and Bob Backlund. In the early 80s, Jerry left the WWF for the AWA, where he enjoyed his greatest success, becoming a main event wrestler and feuding with the likes of Greg Gagne, Jim Brunzell, and Ken Patera. One of the most notable moments in his career came in 1984 during the Battle Royal at the St. Paul Civic Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. After he won the Battle Royal, he was attacked and triple teamed by the Abdullah the Butcher, Sheik Adnan LKC, and Bruiser Brody. This was not part of the script. The in-ring beating continued backstage, where the three continued to pummel Jerry until Dusty Rhodes and Kurt Hennig came to his aid. This gigantic feud allowed Jerry to change his image, becoming a fan favorite, and he quickly became one of the AWA's most popular wrestlers. As his popularity grew, so did the demand, and over the next couple of years, those demands began to take its toll. Jerry was always a very large individual. Most of his career, he weighed over 450 pounds, which led to a number of health problems, including diabetes. In the late 80s, health and physical problems really took their toll on Jerry, and he was forced to slow down. He was relegated to the undercards and an occasional dark match. His health and physical woes were compounded in December of 1994 when he was injured in a car crash. Those injuries, along with numerous health problems, finally claimed his life. Jerry Crusher Blackwell passed away on January 22nd, 1995, at the young age of 45. The final stop in this video is at the Tennessee-Georgia Memorial Park near Rossville, Georgia. Here, I visit the grave of the fabulous Freebird, Terry Bam Bam Gordy. I'm at the Georgia-Tennessee Memorial Park in Rossville, Georgia. This cemetery is located in North Georgia, just a few miles from the Chickamauga National Military Park and the Tennessee state line. After finishing my visit to Chickamauga, I still had some time before I needed to head over to to my hotel in nearby Ringgold, Georgia. So I decided to come here and visit the final resting place of professional wrestler Terry Bam Bam Gordy. This is a large cemetery. There was no GPS or plot information with this Find a Grave memorial. So I drove around for the better part of 30 minutes and finally found this memorial bench at the grave of Freebird Terry Gordy. Terry Ray Gordy was born on April 23, 1961 in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He began his wrestling career in 1975 when he was only 14 years old. He wrestled for a few local independent promotions until 1979 when he joined Michael P.S. Hayes and Buddy Roberts to form the Fabulous Freebirds. The Freebirds would become one of the most recognized and successful teams in professional wrestling. The Freebirds were an instant hit when they joined Mid-South Championship Wrestling and almost immediately began feuding with Jerry the King Lawler, Bill Dundee, and Austin Idol. After enjoying great success in the Mid-South area, Terry and the Freebirds moved to Texas, signing with World Class Championship Wrestling. Some of the most iconic and legendary matches in professional wrestling history occurred here in the World Class area between the Freebirds and the Von Erichs. For several years, the Freebirds and the Von Erichs wrestled to packed arenas all over Texas and Oklahoma. Several times the Freebirds' antics against the Von Erichs so enraged the fans that it was all the police could do to get them safely out of the arena. Even today, old-time wrestling fans still recall in great detail many of the matches that made up the Freebird-Von Erich feud. While appearing with World Class Wrestling, Terry made several trips to Japan, teaming with Dr. Death Steve Williams. Just like in the U.S., Bam Bam and Dr. Death played the villain and had several notable matches against the top stars of Japan. When Terry returned from Japan, he rejoined the Freebirds, appearing in Memphis with Universal Championship Wrestling, which was a rebranded version of the old Mid-South Wrestling. Over the next several years, Terry and the Freebirds appeared with a number of regional promotions, including Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, Georgia and Florida Championship Wrestling, and a couple of brief stints with the WWF. In the late 90s, Terry left the WWF and the Freebirds, turning to the independent promotions of the South. For the next couple of years, he appeared with Smoky Mountain Wrestling and Extreme Championship Wrestling before he eventually returned to Japan. In Japan, he once again played the villain, appearing in sold-out arenas and taking on the country's top stars. However, his last professional wrestling match was for the IWA in Japan on February the 4th, 2001. After that match, Terry returned to the United States and took some time off. He was at his home in Soddy Daisy, Tennessee, when he suffered a fatal heart attack on July 16, 2001. Terry Bam Bam Gordy was only 40 years old. Following his death, Terry was inducted into the Southern Wrestling and the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fames. Finally, on April 2nd, 2016, Terry Gordy was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame as a member of the Fabulous Freebirds. This brings us to the end of this video. As always, I appreciate you watching and being a part of my channel. I have a lot of new content coming up in the weeks ahead, so if you haven't already, I'd like to invite you to ring that bell and subscribe so that you can keep up with all of my adventures. And if you're so inclined, a thumbs up is always appreciated. Now, as always, please remember, life is a wonderful journey. Be sure to take time and enjoy it. And I'll see you down the road. So long, everybody.